In a stunning midnight move, King Charles has handed the crown to Prince Harry, bypassing William, and in doing so, Camilla has been stripped of her queen consort title. No speeches, no ceremony, just silence, shock, and a royal future rewritten. This isn't a rumor, it's real. The night everything changed. It didn't come with trumpets. There was no public address, no grand balcony wave or national anthem echoing through palace gates. Instead, it happened quietly, late in the evening, long after the cameras had packed up for the day. A single palace announcement, released just before midnight, landed like a royal earthquake. King Charles had named Prince Harry as the next monarch. Not William, not the heir who had trained his whole life for the job, but Harry, the son who walked away. There was no ceremony, no warning, no time to process. Just a brief, cold statement that changed the royal line forever. The king has declared a transfer of royal responsibility effective immediately. That was it. Inside Buckingham Palace, the impact was instant. According to staff present that night, corridors froze, conversations stopped, and even senior advisors were caught completely off guard. One witness described the atmosphere as thick with disbelief. After more than 1,000 years of royal tradition, the natural order had been overturned in a single document. For the first time in modern British history, a reigning monarch bypassed the direct heir, not through abdication due to scandal or war, but by choice. Deliberate, calculated, quiet. But as the shock settled over royal watchers and headlines scrambled to keep up, one aftershock cut even deeper. Camilla, queen consort, the woman who had stood beside Charles through decades of public struggle, controversy, and eventual coronation, was immediately stripped of her royal title. No tribute, no farewell, just a quiet update on the official court circular. Queen Camilla will no longer retain use of the queen consort styling. Her reign, however brief, was over. Just like that. And as stunned journalists, confused citizens, and emotional royal supporters tried to make sense of what just happened, only one thing was certain. The monarchy was no longer following its own rules. Now, with the line of succession rewritten and the crown headed for a prince who once walked away from it all, one question thundered across every corner of the nation. What happens when you're no longer queen? That answer came swiftly and brutally. Camilla's title ends in silence. The end of Camilla's reign didn't come with scandal or headlines. It came with a formality the public barely noticed. And that's exactly how the palace wanted it. Under centuries-old royal law, the title of queen consort exists only during the monarch's reign. It cannot be passed down. It is not earned. It is borrowed, and it disappears the moment the monarch steps aside or dies. So when Charles stepped down, Camilla's title didn't just shift, it vanished. Automatically. No ceremony, no final wave, just gone. Her May 2023 coronation, once thought to be her crowning moment, now feels like a footnote. The diamond-encrusted crown, the carriage ride, the applause, now symbolic, but empty. The legal authority behind it, erased. There was no emotion in the paperwork, a former court official said. Just one line, one change. That's all it took. The court circular was updated just hours after the king's announcement. Camilla was no longer styled as queen consort. She wasn't mentioned as part of the sovereign's household. Even her patronages were flagged for reassignment. Her name, slowly beginning to fade from the documents, that once placed her at the center of royal power. Behind the palace walls, aides reportedly saw it coming. They had reviewed the rules, anticipated the technical fallout, and understood the automatic nature of her title's removal. But what they couldn't prepare for was the emotional weight. This wasn't just a political reshuffle. This was the end of an era Camilla had waited decades to claim. For some, it felt like poetic justice. Supporters of Princess Diana filled online spaces with a single repeated phrase: "She was never meant to wear that crown." For others, it raised questions of loyalty. Had Camilla been betrayed again? After standing beside Charles for over 50 years, through public disgrace, rehabilitation, and finally global acceptance, did she deserve to be erased in a single breath? And perhaps the most haunting part of all, Camilla never spoke. Not one comment, not one public appearance. No goodbye, just silence. Now, as Harry's ascension begins and William's fate hangs in limbo, Camilla finds herself where she started, in the shadows. Except this time, the crown she waited her life to wear is already slipping into the past. Prince Harry, the unexpected king. When King Charles named Prince Harry as his successor, the world didn't just gasp, it split in two. Some called it a redemption story. Others called it betrayal, but no one saw it coming. For over 2 decades, Prince William was the heir. Groomed for the throne, trained in diplomacy, steady, structured, serious. But Charles's choice wasn't based on tradition. It was based on something else entirely: survival. Insiders say Charles had been debating this decision since 2021, when public trust in the monarchy began to drop. Private polling conducted by the palace showed something shocking. Younger generations were drifting away from the royal family fast. They didn't connect with polished speeches or ceremonial events. They connected with real people. And that's where Harry came in. "He's flawed, but he's human," one former royal advisor reportedly said. And that's exactly what the monarchy needs. Harry's journey has been anything but traditional. From walking behind his mother's coffin at age 12 to serving in Afghanistan, to walking away from royal duties in 2020, every chapter of his life has been marked by chaos and courage. His public advocacy for mental health, veterans, and equality made him more than just a royal. It made him relatable. And as much as the firm resisted it, Charles saw something undeniable. Harry was connecting with the world in a way the crown no longer could. By 2025, with Charles facing growing health concerns and internal family pressure mounting, he made the most radical decision of his life, handing the crown to the son who once gave it up. "This is about the future, not tradition," Charles told his private council, according to leaked notes. And just like that, Prince Harry, the rebel, the exile, the one who left, became the next King of England. Public reaction? Instant chaos. Royal supporters clashed online and in the streets. Some saw a bold step toward modernizing the monarchy. Others accused Charles of tearing down a 1,000-year legacy. But for Charles, it wasn't about public comfort. It was about institutional survival. He believed Harry could reach where tradition could not, into classrooms, into broken homes, into real lives. And as the palace scrambled to prepare for a future led by a king who once lived in California, another truth quietly emerged behind the scenes. William's entire royal identity was now collapsing. William's royal identity in free fall. For as long as Prince William can remember, he was the future king. From the moment he was born in 1982, every school event, every handshake, every camera flash was preparing him for one thing: the throne. And then, in a single decision, it was gone. When Harry was announced as Charles's chosen successor, William wasn't just blindsided. He was shaken to the core. Sources close to the royal household say he received no prior warning. One aide claimed William found out only hours before the public did. "He didn't speak for 2 days," the aide added. "He just stared out the window." The fallout was immediate. William's most symbolic titles, Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, and his role as next in line, were suddenly under legal review. Royal advisors began revisiting historical documents, including the 1936 abdication crisis, to determine what, if anything, should remain in place. Behind palace doors, 2 camps emerged: those who supported a soft fade, letting William's titles quietly fall out of use, and those who pushed for formal removal, which would require new letters patent signed by Harry once crowned. Either way, the impact was brutal. Everything William had built, the image of a steady heir, a modern family man, a future monarch, was now in question. Even Kate, the Princess of Wales, was affected. Her titles, roles, and scheduled patronages were put under review as the monarchy scrambled to restructure its public face. And the most painful part? William hadn't failed. He hadn't broken protocol. He hadn't caused scandal. He simply wasn't chosen. Supporters rallied to his side. Hashtags like #Justice for William and #Heir deserved the crown began trending. Protesters gathered outside Kensington Palace, demanding clarity. But inside, William said nothing. Friends say he felt frozen, not angry, not sad, just lost. He had built his whole life around a future that now belonged to someone else. "The throne was his destiny, until it wasn't," said a longtime royal insider. And as Harry prepares for kingship, William faces the most personal crisis of his life, one that can't be solved with press releases or staged appearances. Because it's not just about titles, it's about identity. And for William, the future he believed in just vanished. Camilla's reign, from controversy to collapse. Queen Camilla never had an easy road. From the moment her name entered public conversation in the 1990s, she was branded a villain, a homewrecker, a symbol of everything that went wrong in Charles and Diana's marriage. The press was ruthless. Public opinion was colder. But somehow, she survived it all, and even rose to power. Until now. Camilla's 2023 coronation was supposed to be her redemption arc. The crown placed on her head was more than royal tradition. It was proof that she had finally earned her place. But behind every smile, behind every wave from the golden carriage, the ghost of Diana loomed. No matter what she wore, the public still saw someone else in that seat, one palace aide confessed. And now, in 2025, that seat is gone. When Charles stepped down and Prince Harry was named his successor, Camilla's title vanished overnight. Legally, she was no longer queen consort. The crown she waited decades to wear, just a museum piece now. The patronages she held, reassigned. Her name, removed from official documents, palace press releases, and future state ceremonies. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't scandalous. It was silent and total. Public response was instant and divided. On social media, Hashtags like #Justice for Diana and #She was never queen trended within minutes. Critics said this was history correcting itself, that Diana's legacy had finally, in some spiritual way, reclaimed its crown. Others, more sympathetic, asked a different question. Was Camilla betrayed by the very man who promised to stand by her forever? She had walked beside Charles for over 50 years, through disgrace, through global scrutiny, through a marriage the world once called unforgivable. And now, the title she earned through persistence had been erased with one royal transition. She gave everything to the man, but the man gave the throne to someone else, a former staff member said quietly. Her future is uncertain. Some sources say she may retire quietly to Ray Mill House, her private estate. Others believe she will fight to retain influence behind the scenes, especially in preserving Charles's legacy. But one thing is clear: the public won't forget. Her reign, short as it was, will be debated for generations. Was she a queen who endured, or a crown that never fit? Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace wasn't just reeling from a symbolic change. Inside, the foundation was cracking. Inside, the palace breakdown. When Charles's decision became official, Buckingham Palace didn't just react. It descended into crisis. Staff weren't briefed. Departments were caught off guard. Security, communications, and press teams scrambled as if someone had pulled the fire alarm on the entire monarchy. By midnight, strategy meetings had overtaken 3 wings of the palace. Senior aides gathered in hushed rooms. Protocols were shattered. Schedules were ripped apart. Royal hierarchy erased in real time. One insider described it as the most chaotic 12 hours the palace has seen since Diana's death in 1997. The most senior officials were told to dig up royal legal frameworks, letters patent, succession laws, title precedents. Even the Queen's 1952 documents were pulled for reference. Nothing like this had happened before. The monarchy had rules for death, for abdication, for scandal, but not for a voluntary transfer of power from father to son, bypassing the heir. Even Charles's own staff were shaken. Some reportedly cried. Others considered resigning. After all, they had served a king who suddenly decided he no longer wanted to be king. "It wasn't just a title change, it was a full system reset," said one palace official. The ripple effect was massive. Residences had to be reassigned. Clarence House, Kensington Palace, the Duchy of Cornwall, all needed new administrative structures. Security arrangements, travel protocols, and royal staff roles had to be reviewed overnight. And then came the question no one wanted to ask. What would Prince Harry do next? Because as the new monarch, he now had power, real power, to decide who keeps what. Titles, properties, roles, and more than that, who stays relevant and who quietly disappears. Inside those palace walls, fear spread fast. Not just of change, but of unforgiving justice. And if people thought the worst was over, they hadn't yet seen what happened when the Crown rewrote its own rules. The law behind stripping royal titles. Royal titles don't survive on sentiment. They survive on law. And inside Buckingham Palace, as the dust settled from Charles's shocking decision, the silent machinery of monarchy began to move, not emotionally, but legally. The first change was automatic. Camilla's title, Queen Consort, dissolved the moment Charles stepped down. There was no debate, no loophole, no ceremony. British constitutional tradition is clear. Queen consort exists only during a reigning monarch's lifetime or active rule. When he leaves the throne, so does she. The palace didn't issue a formal revocation. It didn't have to. A quiet update to the royal court circular was enough. Her title was gone, without discussion, without appeal.
The law is cold. It doesn't care about public sympathy, a royal legal advisor reportedly said. But Prince William's situation was far more complicated. His titles, Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, and others, were not inherited by blood alone. They were granted by King Charles through formal letters patent, a centuries-old legal document that assigns royal styles and responsibilities. Now that Harry is the incoming monarch, everything William holds is under review. The question facing palace lawyers was this: should William's titles be allowed to fade quietly, or should they be revoked publicly? A soft removal would mean palace briefings and press offices gradually stop referring to him as Prince of Wales. His name would vanish from formal documents. Over time, the public would notice, and the title would simply fall out of use. A hard removal would mean King Harry, upon ascending, issues a new letter patent, officially revoking William's titles in the eyes of the law and the Commonwealth. This would be loud, unmistakable, and permanent. Palace aides reviewed historic precedents, including the 1936 abdication of Edward VIII, when titles were stripped and redefined in a matter of days. In that case, Wallis Simpson was denied the title Her Royal Highness, even after marriage. Now, history seemed to be repeating, only this time the heir wasn't leaving by choice. He was being pushed aside. As these legal gears turned, power shifted slowly and publicly. What began as a single statement from Charles was now reshaping the structure of the monarchy itself. And while royal titles were being shredded in silence, something even louder erupted outside the palace walls. The public had found out, and the nation was already dividing. The public uproar, a nation divided. The legal documents hadn't even finished processing when the public reaction exploded. Within minutes of the announcement, social media platforms across the globe lit up with shock, fury, celebration, and confusion. Hashtags like #TeamHarry, #TeamWilliam, and #Justice for Diana began trending by the millions. The UK woke up to headlines it never thought it would see. Harry to be king. Camilla's title gone. William cut out of the crown. In cities like London, Manchester, and Edinburgh, protests and vigils began forming almost immediately. Some held signs demanding Charles reverse the decision. Others stood with photos of Diana, celebrating what they saw as karmic justice. "She should have been queen," one protester said, holding a candle in front of Kensington Palace. "Now, at least, her son will be king." The nation was divided, deeply and emotionally. Supporters of William and Catherine saw the move as a betrayal. To them, this was not modernization. It was a robbery of legacy. William had followed every rule, lived with royal discipline, and upheld the crown with grace. Meanwhile, Harry supporters hailed it as the moment the monarchy finally opened its eyes. To them, Harry represented something new, raw, honest, emotionally transparent. Not a perfect royal, but a human one. Polls began to reflect the split. YouGov released a flash survey showing 54% of Britons over age 50 disapproved of the decision. But among Britons aged 18 to 35, 62% supported Harry's rise. The generational divide was now impossible to ignore. News anchors on BBC, Sky, and international outlets scrambled to catch up.
Analysts debated the constitutional validity. Parliament members began pressing for clarity. Should royal transitions require public or legislative input in the future? In the chaos, one word kept rising: Diana. Clips of her interviews, old footage of her speaking about her sons, and emotional sound bites resurfaced. One in particular, her 1995 statement that "William and Harry are my whole world," went viral. To many, Harry's rise was not just surprising. It felt like unfinished history rewriting itself. As flags fluttered over royal buildings and tension gripped every corner of the country, one truth settled in. This wasn't just a royal family reshuffle, it was a national identity crisis. And the man behind it all? Charles, a king who waited 70 years for power, only to give it away. Was this Charles's plan all along? King Charles III waited over 70 years for the crown, then gave it away just 2 years after his 2023 coronation. Not to William, but to Harry. Sources say this wasn't sudden. It was a quiet, calculated shift, long in the making. Behind palace walls, Charles saw what the public didn't: falling approval, rising indifference, and a monarchy struggling to stay relevant. He didn't want to be the king who watched the monarchy fade, one aide said. William was tradition, polished, careful. Harry was emotion, flawed, but connected. Charles realized Harry speaks to the world the crown had lost. At 76, Charles felt the weight of age. The strain, the urgency. As pressure from media, parliament, and Republican voices grew louder, the palace moved faster. In a sealed room, with only trusted advisors, Charles made the decision. Stepped down not as king, but as father, reformer, and survivor. He wasn't choosing the easier son, he was choosing the one who could carry the storm, a royal historian revealed. Driven by duty or Diana's memory? Maybe both. But one thing's certain, Charles didn't abdicate. He changed history. What happens now is the real test. A monarchy forever changed. The British monarchy has weathered wars, divorces, and abdications, but spring 2025 marked something different. A transformation. With Prince Harry rising, Camilla erased, and William sidelined, the crown no longer follows tradition. The heir didn't become king. The queen consort vanished. The rules rewritten. This isn't the end of the monarchy, a BBC analyst said, but it's the end of how we understood it. Harry brings a new mission: mental health, climate action, veterans support, less ceremony, more connection. But not everyone is ready. Older Brits feel shut out. Parliament debates limits. Commonwealth nations reconsider ties. Meanwhile, Camilla, title gone, has retreated from public life. William, no longer heir, focuses on his children. And Charles watches silently. A king who gave it all away. One presence still lingers: Diana. Her memory now shapes everything. Harry's rise, William's pain, Camilla's downfall. To many, it feels like Diana's final justice. To others, it's a dangerous gamble. Either way, the monarchy is no longer the same, Bound, not in name, not in purpose. And as the crown passes hands, the world watches one question unfold. Is this a rebirth or the beginning of the end? With Camilla erased, Harry rising, and William cast aside, the monarchy now faces its most unpredictable chapter yet. The crown has changed hands, but at what cost? As tradition shatters and history is rewritten, one question remains. Is this the monarchy's rebirth or the beginning of its fall?